Ethan Miller woke up on a gray, chilly Portland morning, the kind that made the whole world feel slow and heavy. It was his 38th birthday, but the day didn't feel special. Birthdays had become quieter over the years. No big parties, no surprises, just a simple breakfast and a long day of work. He stepped out onto his porch to grab the newspaper, expecting nothing unusual. But something immediately caught his eye. A small navy blue box sat neatly in the center of his doorstep. There was no card, no handwriting, nothing to hint who left it there. He looked around the street, but no one was outside. His neighborhood was peaceful, especially on mornings like this when the fog still hung low over the rooftops. He picked up the box, noticing how carefully it had been wrapped. Whoever sent it had taken their time. Inside was a silver keychain shaped like a tiny house. Smooth edges, clean lines, almost delicate. Ethan turned it in his hand, feeling the cool metal press against his fingers. It wasn't expensive, but it felt meaningful. Too thoughtful to be random, he returned inside and set the keychain on the kitchen counter. As he made coffee, he kept glancing at it, wondering who would send him something like that. He didn't expect gifts from anyone. Most of the people who once filled his birthdays with laughter were no longer part of his life. Time had moved them apart the way tides pull sand from a shore. He thought about his childhood friend Mark. Lost touch. Old college buddies. Scattered across different states. Former relationships. Ended with polite goodbyes. None of them would mail a gift like this. And especially not anonymously. But life was busy, and mysteries didn't stay at the front of the mind for long. Ethan had a landscaping project due, client meetings, and a tight schedule that demanded his attention. So the keychain stayed on the counter untouched, though he often found himself picking it up at night, turning it over like a puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere yet. A week passed. It was a Thursday afternoon when he got a message from his assistant reminding him of a new client consultation. Nothing special. A quick meeting. A woman had requested to speak with him about a renovation project. Ethan read the email twice. There was nothing unusual about it. He walked into the small meeting room inside his office building, expecting to see a stranger instead. Time seemed to stop. Standing near the window, her back slightly turned, was a woman he knew better than he wanted to admit. A woman he had spent years trying not to think about. Her presence hit him with the same force as a sudden storm. Clara Hayes. She turned slowly when she heard the door open, and her hazel eyes met his. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them tightened, filled with memories that had never really gone away. Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat. He knew she had moved to another state years ago. He knew she had built a completely different life. And he knew she wasn't supposed to be here, standing in his office, looking at him with old sadness hidden behind a soft, tired smile. "Ethan," she said quietly, almost like her voice wasn't ready to say his name out loud. He swallowed hard. "Clara?" She looked the same and different at the same time. Her hair was longer, her posture more guarded, her expression carrying a maturity shaped by years he hadn't lived beside her. The last time he saw her, they were both much younger, hopeful, and unaware of how fast life could break things apart. He stepped inside, letting the door close behind him. He didn't know whether to smile or ask questions or simply stare at her until reality made sense again. His thoughts tangled. What are you doing here?" he finally asked. She held a folder close to her chest. Her fingers tightened around it as if drawing courage from the paper inside. "I'm here because I need your help," Clara said. It's personal." The words weren't loud or dramatic, but something in her tone made his heartbeat stumble. He hadn't been part of her life for more than a decade. Why come to him now? Why show up without warning? Why say something so heavy? A thought flashed in his mind, sudden and sharp. The gift. The keychain. The tiny house. He had noticed its craftsmanship. Simple, elegant, familiar. Familiar in a way he couldn't explain at the time. Now, standing here with Clara in front of him, the pieces rearranged themselves. Was it connected to her? Had she sent it? Before he could ask, Clara sat down at the table and placed the folder in front of her. She didn't open it yet. Her eyes drifted around the small room as if searching for steadiness. I didn't know how else to reach you, she said quietly. I thought writing an email would feel wrong. And calling. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. Ethan lowered himself into the seat across from her. Despite the years apart, something inside him responded to the tremble in her voice. He had known her long enough to recognize when she was fighting back emotions. But he didn't want to make assumptions. Not yet, I would have answered, he said gently. She gave a small, unbelieving smile. I wasn't so sure. Silence settled between them, not awkward, just thick with the weight of everything left unsaid. He took a slow breath. Clara, did you send me something last week? She blinked, but didn't pretend not to know what he meant. Her expression softened, her shoulders dropping slightly. Yes, she said. I sent you the keychain. Hearing the confirmation out loud made Ethan lean back in his chair. He felt confused, relieved, and unsettled all at once. Why, Clara didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened the folder and pulled out a small stack of papers, smoothing them with her hand. Her eyes avoided his. There's a lot I need to explain, she said. But I didn't want to start with everything at once. I thought the gift might make things easier. Or maybe just remind you of something you once cared about. Ethan's chest tightened. You think I forgot? Her gaze lifted slowly, and for the first time since she walked in, their eyes met with full honesty. No, she whispered. I don't think you forgot. I think you tried too. You didn't have an answer for that. She looked down at the papers again, gathering herself. I came here because I need you to take on a project. But it's not an ordinary one. A project, he asked carefully. What kind? It's a house, she said. My mother's house. He froze. Her mother. A kind woman who used to welcome him with warm tea and soft advice. Who always said that Ethan and Clara understood each other in ways most people never did. Clara continued, her voice steady even though her fingers trembled. She passed away 3 months ago. The news hit Ethan with quiet force. He sat up straighter. Clara, I'm so sorry. She nodded, swallowing hard. I've been handling everything she left behind. But there's one thing I can't do myself. Her garden. She wanted it restored, and before she died, she wrote a note saying she wished. She wished you would be the one to do it. Ethan stared at her, stunned. He didn't know what to say. Of all the people her mother could have chosen, she had chosen him. After all these years, after all the distance, Clara looked down again, her voice barely above a whisper. That's why I sent the keychain. It was hers. She bought it for you years ago. She said she'd give it to you when the time was right. He felt something shift in his chest, something both painful and gentle. But why a house? What was she trying to say? Clara reached into the folder again and handed him a small folded note. The paper looked worn, handled many times. Maybe this will help, she said softly. Ethan opened the note carefully. Home isn't always a place you live in. Sometimes it's a feeling you return to, even after years apart. The words blurred slightly as Ethan read them again. He felt the message deeper than he expected, clear, warm, and unsteady. He looked up at Clara, who watched him with a mixture of sadness and hope. I didn't understand the gift either, she said. Not until I walked in and saw you again. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't need to. He finally understood. And the story between them, the one left unfinished long ago, had quietly opened its first page again. Ethan sat across from Clara, the folder lying between them on the polished wooden table of his office. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the distant sounds of traffic outside. Clara's fingers traced the edge of her cup, her knuckles white with tension. He noticed the little things, the way her eyes darted to the window, the way she breathed when words seemed stuck in her throat. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't awkward. It was the weight of years apart, of feelings paused and waiting. Tell me about the house, Ethan finally said, breaking the quiet. His voice was gentle, careful, almost unsure, because he didn't want to startle the fragile rhythm they were rediscovering. Clara nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking. It's my mother's house, she began. She passed away 3 months ago, left everything to me, but there's one part I can't handle myself. The garden. She wanted it restored before it's sold, and she wanted you to do it." Ethan froze for a moment, the air thick in his lungs. He hadn't seen her mother in years, but he remembered her warmth, her quiet wisdom. Her laughter filling the kitchen on long summer afternoons. She had always treated him like family, like someone worthy of care. And now, after all this time, her last wish was bringing him back into their lives in a way he hadn't expected. "Why me?" he asked, his voice soft but firm. "After all these years, why would she choose me?" Clara's eyes softened, glistening with emotion. "Because she knew you and I. We understood each other in a way no one else could. She believed you'd restore it with care, not just as a project, but as something alive. And maybe she hoped this would bring us back together, even if just a little." Ethan swallowed, the words catching in his throat. His eyes fell to the folder again, to the papers she had brought. Photos of the garden, sketches of plants, notes scribbled in her mother's handwriting. Each page carried history, memories, a life lived with care and love. It was more than landscaping. It was a piece of someone's soul. "I don't know what to say," Ethan whispered. "I didn't expect any of this. Not you, not the garden, not her gift." He glanced down at the keychain in his pocket, feeling the metal warm under his fingers. It was no longer just a piece of silver. It was a connection, a bridge between past and present. Clara leaned forward slightly, her voice trembling. "It wasn't just a gift. It was her way of reaching you. She knew we both needed time to understand. Everything she hoped we would feel again. And I guess I needed to see you too." The words hung in the air. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years he noticed the subtle changes. The faint lines of experience around her eyes, the quiet strength in her posture. The way her hair caught the afternoon light from the window. She had grown, matured, and yet the core of her, the person he had once loved, was still there, intact, waiting for him to notice. He took a deep breath and opened the folder. Scanning through the notes again, one page had a handwritten letter, folded carefully, edges slightly worn. He unfolded it and read, "Ethan, life has a way of separating people, but sometimes it also finds a way to bring them back. Remember the laughter under the maple tree, the quiet evenings spent planning nothing, the dreams you once shared. These things are never lost. They live in the moments, in the feelings, and sometimes in a garden waiting to be restored. Treat it gently as you would the memories it holds." Ethan's chest tightened. Every word felt like it had been written for him, a message across time, a plea for care and understanding. The keychain, the letter, the sudden appearance of Clara, it all began to make sense now. It wasn't just a house. It wasn't just a gift. It was a way to remind him of what he had forgotten, of what was still possible. He looked up, his eyes meeting Clara's. "I understand now. The gift, it wasn't just hers. It's ours. Or maybe it's a bridge to something we never finished." Clara nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I never understood it before either. Not until I saw you again. And I realized some things are too important to let go of." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of words settling around them. Outside, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the room. It felt like the world had paused, giving them this moment to breathe, to reconnect, to acknowledge what had never truly ended between them. Ethan finally spoke. "So, what now?" Clara hesitated, then smiled faintly, a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "We finished the garden together, and maybe we talk about us. About what we never said, what we never tried." He smiled back, a quiet, cautious smile that carried relief and anticipation. "I'd like that." The days that followed were filled with long afternoons at the house, working in the garden, restoring plants, trimming bushes, and arranging flowers. It wasn't easy at first. The garden had been neglected for months, and each task carried memories, some bitter, some sweet. But as they worked, Ethan and Clara began to talk again about the past. The dreams they had abandoned, the mistakes they had made, and the quiet longing that had never really faded. Ethan noticed the small things, the way Clara's fingers brushed against petals, the way her laughter came easily when something reminded her of a memory, the way her presence filled the space in a way no one else could. Clara noticed the changes in him too, how he moved with care, how he listened with attention, how his eyes softened when she spoke. Slowly, the walls built by time and distance began to crumble. One evening, after hours of work, they sat on the garden steps, exhausted but satisfied. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The keychain, which Ethan had kept in his pocket, felt warm again, a reminder of the journey they were on. "I never thought a garden could hold so much," Clara said softly, looking at the rows of flowers they had planted together. "Or a gift could mean this much." Ethan reached over and gently touched her hand. "Some things you only understand when the right person walks back into your life. That's when you realize what they were trying to tell you all along." She smiled, leaning slightly into his touch. The air was quiet, filled with possibilities, memories, and new beginnings. It was a moment suspended in time where the past and present intertwined. And the future seemed full of hope. Days turned into weeks. The garden began to bloom in ways it hadn't in years. Neighbors noticed, passing by to admire the restored beauty. But Ethan and Clara were focused on more than just the flowers. They were rediscovering each other, learning to talk without fear, to laugh without hesitation, and to forgive the time they had lost. Ethan often thought back to the keychain, now resting on the garden table beside them. It wasn't just a gift anymore, was a symbol, a reminder that life could circle back, that love could return, and that some connections were never truly broken. Clara, too, carried the memory of it with her, understanding that the smallest gestures often held the greatest meaning. One afternoon, as they planted a row of tulips near the old maple tree, Ethan paused and looked at Clara. The breeze lifted her hair. The sunlight kissed her face, and for a moment, he saw all the years between them fade away. She smiled at him, and he realized that sometimes life gave second chances quietly, without fanfare, through simple acts and unspoken words. "I guess your mother was right," Ethan said finally, voice low but full of certainty. "Home isn't a place. It's a feeling. And I feel like I'm finally home." Clara's eyes shimmered with tears of relief and happiness. "I feel it too. More than I thought I could ever feel again." The keychain glinted in the sunlight, lying on the table as if nodding in agreement. It had been more than a gift. It had been a message, a bridge, and a reminder that sometimes what seems small holds the power to change everything. As they stood together in the garden, watching the flowers sway gently in the wind, Ethan and Clara knew that life had given them another chance, a chance to rebuild, to cherish, to love in ways they had once only dreamed of. And though the past would always be a part of them, it no longer weighed them down. Instead, it guided them forward, like the keychain's quiet, steady presence, symbol of hope, love, and the understanding that some gifts are meant to be realized only when the right person walks in. They didn't need grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Their connection was quiet, tender, and real. It was in the way they worked side by side, in the soft smiles shared over a row of flowers, in the warmth of being understood without words. It was a love that had waited patiently, disguised as a garden and a simple silver keychain, and now, finally, it was alive again. Ethan took Clara's hand. She didn't pull away. They walked slowly through the garden, past the rows they had restored, past the blooming flowers and newly planted shrubs, until they reached the old maple tree. They sat beneath it, letting the shadows stretch across them, comfortable in silence, connected by memories and renewed hope. Some gifts aren't meant to be understood immediately. Some feelings aren't meant to be recognized until the right moment. And some people are meant to return when you least expect them, carrying the pieces of your heart that you thought were lost forever. Ethan looked at Clara, the keychain warm in his pocket, the letter safe in his mind, and whispered softly, "I'm glad you walked in, Clara smiled, her heart full, her eyes glistening. Me too. And in that quiet garden, surrounded by life and memories, they realized that the gift had never been about the object.